Known as one of the greatest symbols of modernity and wealth, Hong Kong shines with its towering skyscrapers and its bustling financial center. But behind this glittering facade lies a side few dare to explore. Did you know that while millionaires buy empty properties as investments, hundreds of thousands of people live in coffin homes or cages? Want to understand how one of the richest cities in the world reached this level of inequality? Stay with us. Today, we will show you the darker side of Hong Kong, a reality that starkly contrasts with its fame for modernity and prosperity. 1. Location and geographic facts. Hong Kong is nestled on the southern coast of China, near the Pearl River Delta. It is a special administrative region, which means it is part of China, but has its own rules, or at least it did. We'll get to that part shortly. With just 1,000 square kilometers, Hong Kong is small, but don't be fooled by its size. 7.5 million people squeeze into its massive skyscrapers, mountain slopes, and land reclaimed from the sea. Everything is grandiose, compact, and crowded. When it comes to finance, Hong Kong plays in the big leagues, ranking alongside New York, London, and Tokyo. Its tax system is simple, its rates are low, and money flows like water. This attracts investors and businesses from around the world. The buildings are not just homes but the operational bases for banks, insurers, and even retail giants. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange is one of the busiest in Asia. But Hong Kong is not just about money. It is also the gateway to mainland China. Want to break into the Chinese market? Hong Kong offers infrastructure, services, and, until recently, enviable legal stability. Culturally, the city is a unique mix. On the same street, you can hear Cantonese, Mandarin, English, and sometimes something you don't understand but find amazing. The food is an experience in itself, from Michelin-starred restaurants to crowded night market stalls, serving flavors you won't find elsewhere. Art, film festivals, museums, and a vibrant energy blend Eastern and Western traditions like nowhere else. At night, the lights of Hong Kong transform the city into a constellation on the ground, a vision of modernity and prosperity. But not everything is as beautiful and shiny as it seems, as you're about to find out. 2. History. We've mentioned that Hong Kong is nestled on the Chinese coast, right? So here's a seemingly simple question. Is Hong Kong part of China or an independent nation? Geographically, the answer is clear. Hong Kong is on the southern edge of Chinese territory. But when you look beyond geographic borders, the answer becomes much more complicated. To understand, we need to go back in time. In short, China lost 2 opium wars against Britain. The first began in 1839. As part of the defeat agreements, China ceded Hong Kong and a neighboring peninsula in the Canton region to the British. These areas were strategic because of the port. As a result, Hong Kong was under British rule for 155 years. On July 1, 1997, the city was returned to China, or reunified, as the Chinese put it, but this came with conditions. For the next 50 years, until 2047, Hong Kong was to have a high degree of autonomy. Thus, the one country, two systems principle was born, meaning Hong Kong became a special administrative region like Macau, with a system very different from the rest of China. 3. Differences. For starters, Hong Kong maintained its capitalist system after the handover to China. It has its own currency, the Hong Kong dollar, which is distinct from the Chinese yuan. Crossing between Hong Kong and mainland China involves immigration checkpoints, almost as if traveling between 2 separate countries. Mainland Chinese citizens require a visa to enter Hong Kong, and vice versa. Hong Kong residents even have their own passports. One striking difference is the legal system. Hong Kong follows English common law, while China's judicial system is vastly different. Additionally, Hong Kong enjoys freedoms not found on the mainland, such as freedom of the press and unrestricted internet access. Even the official languages diverge, Cantonese and English in Hong Kong versus Mandarin in mainland China. Culturally, these distinctions create a unique identity for Hong Kong. Yet, there's a growing tension between preserving this identity and China's expanding influence. For example, Beijing has encouraged migration from the mainland to Hong Kong, which some locals view as an attempt to dilute their autonomy. This cultural and political clash was evident during the 2014 Umbrella Revolution, where citizens protested against Beijing's interference in local elections. While Hong Kong still markets itself as Asia's world city, a bridge between East and West, the future remains uncertain. In 2047, the region's current autonomy under the one country, two systems policy is set to expire. Many wonder what this means for its freedoms and distinct way of life. The dark side. Despite its gleaming skyscrapers and bustling financial districts, Hong Kong hides one of the starkest wealth gaps in the world. Beneath the glittering facade lies a housing crisis so severe that thousands live in spaces barely larger than a coffin. Unlike slums in other cities, where poverty is often visible in sprawling makeshift settlements, Hong Kong's poverty is hidden within its buildings, creating vertical slums. 5. Vertical slums. Vertical slums are old, overcrowded buildings where apartments have been subdivided into impossibly tiny spaces. Originally constructed to house families decently, these buildings have become havens of real estate speculation and overcrowding. Each apartment might consist of a single room, with multiple families sharing a bathroom and a small communal area. Privacy is virtually non-existent, and hygiene often suffers in these conditions. 6. Coffin homes. If vertical slums sound bad, coffin homes are even worse. These spaces are about 2 square meters in size, just enough room for a bed and a few belongings. Residents often stack their possessions above their beds or cram them into narrow corners. Some units are enclosed with a sliding door or curtain, offering minimal privacy. Others are fully exposed, with neighbors' sounds, smells, and conversations permeating the air. For many, this is the only option they can afford. 7. Cage mansions. Cage mansions take the concept of cramped living to an extreme. Residents live in metal cages stacked inside larger apartments. Each cage is barely big enough for a person to lie down, often without a mattress. Dozens of these cages might be crammed into a single unit, resembling an animal shelter more than a living space. Facilities like kitchens or bathrooms, if available, are shared by everyone. 8. Who is affected? The people living in these dire conditions are typically the most vulnerable: the elderly. Many older residents came from mainland China decades ago to help build Hong Kong's prosperity, but are now left with minimal pensions and no safety net. Immigrants, workers from Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand, often find themselves stuck in these conditions due to low wages and limited rights. Local workers. Even Hong Kong's own workforce, such as cooks, cleaners, and delivery drivers, sometimes cannot afford anything better given the city's exorbitant housing costs. 9. How did Hong Kong get here? Several factors contributed to this crisis. Limited land. Hong Kong's geography leaves little room for expansion, with mountains and the sea restricting available space. Real estate speculation. Investors hoard properties as assets, driving up prices while leaving many units vacant. Flawed policies. Government housing initiatives have lagged behind the city's population growth, exacerbating the issue. 10. What's being done? Efforts to address this issue include public housing programs, urban renewal projects, and initiatives to regulate the real estate market. However, these measures often fall short of meeting the overwhelming demand. Meanwhile, NGOs and grassroots organizations work to provide temporary relief, offering food, legal aid, and support to those most in need. Hong Kong's glittering skyline and bustling streets often mask the harsh reality faced by its most vulnerable residents. Behind the facade of modernity lies a housing crisis that forces thousands into cramped, inhumane conditions, an invisible population overshadowed by the city's wealth and progress. This isn't just a local issue, it's a global reminder of how prosperity can leave many behind. The stories of those living in coffin homes and cage mansions challenge us to rethink what true progress means. Can a city claim success when so many are denied the basic dignity of a livable home? As we reflect on Hong Kong's darker side, let's not forget the resilience of its people and the urgent need for systemic change. Together, we can amplify their voices, advocate for fair housing, and work towards a world where prosperity is shared by all. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, share it, start a conversation, and let's make a difference. Until next time, stay curious and compassionate.